On October 4, 1959, a human skeleton belonging to a child between the ages of 6 and 8 was found in a ditch off Davis Road, north of Bonnewell Road and south of Pioneer Road in the city of Mequon, Wisconsin. The location, about 20 miles north of Milwaukee, then became the center of a chilling investigation. Authorities determined the child had suffered severe neglect and abuse, including a healed broken rib. Even more disturbing was the fact that the remains had been dismembered. Initially, investigators believed the remains belonged to a female child, as the body had longer hair. Unfortunately, the child's identification would remain unknown for the next 65 years. In September 2024, with the help of Othram, DNA was extracted from the child's skull, and a profile of a boy was created and uploaded to a public DNA database. From there, they were able to identify the boy's mother as Josephine Breney, who passed away in 2001. The boy was then identified as 6-year-old Chester Alfred Breney, who was born on February 26, 1952, in Houghton, Michigan. Tragically, after Josephine's passing, she had no other living relatives. Further investigation revealed that Josephine had given him up when he was 3 years old, and he was subsequently admitted to the Goodwill Farm Orphanage in Michigan. On March 24, 1955, Chester was adopted by William and Hilda Jutila and renamed Marku Jutila. What should have been a new beginning filled with love turned into a nightmare. Instead of providing care and support, the Jutilas subjected him to unimaginable cruelty. He was killed in December 1958, a year before his remains were discovered in Mequon. At the time Chester's body was found, investigators 300 miles away in Michigan were also looking for him. Family members of the Jutilas had grown suspicious about his well-being, but when questioned, William and Hilda, who had moved from Houghton County to Chicago, provided vague and contradictory answers. They claimed Marku had fallen ill and died in his room. However, their story quickly unraveled under police interrogation. During a police interview, Hilda admitted to beating him to death. The couple initially tried to coordinate their story by speaking in Finnish, unaware that one of the officers present also spoke the language. They eventually confessed, saying that after he died, they fled to Chicago and stopped along the way to dispose of his body in a ditch in Mequon. The Houghton County Sheriff's Department contacted Mequon police about the skeletal remains found in 1959, noting similarities to Marku. Based on the adopted parents' confessions and the location of the body, the Jutilas were arrested on March 28, 1966, and extradited to Wisconsin to face charges. However, prosecutors dropped the charges on November 10, 1966, because investigators at the time were unable to conclusively link the remains to Marku. The lack of physical evidence to prove the body's identity resulted in the case being dismissed under the reasoning, no body, no crime. The Jutilas lived out their lives without facing prosecution for the horrific abuse and murder of their adopted son, and both passed away in 1988, leaving behind unanswered questions and a trail of heartbreak. His story, though tragic, moved the community, and funds were raised by local residents and businesses to ensure he received a proper burial. On November 15, 2024, Chester was laid to rest at St. Mary's Parish Cemetery in Port Washington, Wisconsin. His grave is located west of Holden Street, marking a place of peace for a child whose life was cut far too short. In 1978, west of Chicago in Batavia, Illinois, a startling discovery was made on a property undergoing renovations. Hidden behind the drywall was a human skull. At the time, the skull was thought to predate the 1900s. However, despite an initial investigation, its origins remained a mystery. For the next 43 years, the skull was basically forgotten about after being placed in storage at the Batavia Depot Museum. In 2021, museum staff stumbled upon the skull while cleaning and immediately contacted authorities. The Kane County Coroner's Office initiated a formal identification process utilizing modern forensic techniques. Othram Labs conducted DNA sequencing, and within 3 weeks, they had identified a living relative, 69-year-old Wayne Svilar, a retired police sergeant from Portland, Oregon. From there, investigators were able to determine that the skull belonged to 17-year-old Esther Granger, who died more than 150 years ago, shortly after the Civil War. This breakthrough allowed investigators to reconstruct a family tree and piece together her story. Esther was born on October 6, 1848, in Indiana. At just 16 years old, she married Charles Granger in 1865. Soon after, she became pregnant with their first child. Tragically, in May 1866, Esther gave birth to a baby girl but died shortly afterward from complications related to childbirth. She was buried in Indiana by her grieving husband, who named their daughter Esther in her honor. The mystery, however, deepened. How did Esther's skull end up 80 miles away in a wall in Illinois when her body had been buried in Indiana? Authorities believe Esther fell victim to grave robbing, a common practice in the 19th century. During that era, grave robbers could earn the equivalent of 3 to 4 months' wages for a single body. The stolen corpses were often sold to medical schools and physicians eager to study anatomy. Historians suggest that Esther's body may have been sold to a physician or medical student, eventually ending up in Batavia. In August 2024, after more than a century of being lost, Esther's skull was finally laid to rest at West Batavia Cemetery, where her name had already been engraved on a stone tower. Her great-great-grandson, Wayne Spillar, traveled to attend the interment and delivered a heartfelt eulogy, bringing closure to a chapter of his family's history that had remained open for far too long. Kim Isabel Fredrika Wall was born in Sweden on March 23, 1987. A brilliant and determined journalist, she pursued a world-class education, studying at Lund University, the London School of Economics, and Peking University in Beijing. She earned her bachelor's degree in international relations at LSE and later completed dual master's degrees in journalism and international affairs at Columbia University in New York, graduating with honors. Her passion for storytelling led her to freelance journalism, where her work was published in media outlets like The Guardian, The New York Times, and Harper's Magazine. At age 30, Kim lived in Gislev, Trelleborg with her boyfriend Ole. On August 10, 2017, the couple planned a farewell party with friends to celebrate their upcoming move to China, where Kim had secured a new role as a freelance journalist. That evening, however, she received an unexpected text from Peter Madsen, a Danish inventor and minor celebrity known for his ambitious engineering projects. Kim had been trying to secure an interview with Madsen for months to discuss his plan to build a rocket for space exploration. Excited by the opportunity, she accepted his invitation to join him aboard his homemade submarine, the UC-3 Nautilus, for an interview. Unknown to Kim, Madsen had also contacted multiple women before her, inviting them on a submarine ride. She boarded the vessel at 7 p.m. in Copenhagen Harbor. A photo captured her smiling with the sunset in the background, unaware of the horrors awaiting her. Before descending, she texted Ole, telling him she loved him and mentioning that Madsen had brought coffee and cookies for the interview. Madsen presented himself as an innovative and professional engineer, but in reality, he had built the submarine as a torture chamber to fulfill his twisted fantasies of power and violence. Kim was last seen alive around 8:30 p.m., waving to a nearby ship. Those on board noted she appeared relaxed and happy. Back at the party, her loved ones grew increasingly worried as midnight approached and she hadn't returned. By then, both Kim and Madsen were reported missing. The UC-3 Nautilus was briefly spotted near the Oresund Bridge, but lacked satellite tracking, making communication with Madsen impossible until morning. At 10:30 a.m. the next morning, the submarine was located near a lighthouse. As a rescue helicopter approached, Madsen was seen on deck before the vessel sank within 30 seconds. He was rescued by local fishermen and claimed the submarine sank due to a ballast tank failure. Later, he admitted to deliberately sinking it. Initially, Madsen told police he had dropped Kim off safely near a harbor at 10:30 p.m. However, surveillance footage quickly debunked his story. The following day, he changed his account, claiming a heavy hatch had fallen on Kim's head, killing her instantly. On August 21, 2017, a cyclist discovered partial remains that were identified as Kim's. Additional remains were recovered over the next 2 months. Madsen's story changed yet again. He claimed Kim had died of carbon monoxide poisoning while he was on deck and admitted to dismembering her body, but denied murdering her. However, investigators uncovered evidence that painted a much darker picture. Madsen's computer contained snuff films depicting women being tortured and killed. Just hours before the submarine ride, he had searched terms related to dismembering bodies. Further investigation revealed Madsen had brought tools to the submarine, including a saw, sharpened screwdrivers, straps, and pipes. He tied Kim's dismembered remains with these items to weigh them down before discarding them at sea. Forensic analysis could not determine the exact cause of death, but suggested Kim was either strangled or had her throat cut. Police stated she had been stabbed multiple times with a 1-meter-long screwdriver. During the trial, Madsen continued to deny murder, but admitted to dismembering Kim's body. Court psychiatrists described him as a pathological liar with a severe lack of empathy and remorse. He was ultimately found guilty of premeditated murder, aggravated sexual assault, and desecration of a corpse, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In prison, Madsen has continued to draw attention. He married Russian-Mauritian activist Jenny Kirpin and attempted to escape by claiming to have a bomb. Despite his efforts to shift blame, his horrific actions have left a lasting scar on those who loved Kim and the journalism community that admired her bravery and dedication. Her legacy endures through her impactful reporting and the lives she touched. Born on January 15, 1963, Leslie Diane Marty was a 20-year-old mother living in Parkersburg, West Virginia, when her life was tragically cut short. Leslie was the devoted mother of a 4-year-old son named Joseph and was known for her love of sewing and boating. In the early 1980s, Leslie worked under Mark Francis Hanna at an electronics store he operated. Their relationship evolved from professional to personal, but it deteriorated over time. On July 30, 1983, Leslie was abducted at gunpoint by Hanna and never seen alive again. This led to his arrest and subsequent conviction in 1985 for burglary, kidnapping, and abduction with intent to defile. Although the charge of abduction with intent to defile was overturned in 1989, his convictions for burglary and kidnapping stood. However, Leslie remained missing, and in 1991, she was declared legally dead. As Hanna approached parole eligibility in 1996, he was charged and later convicted in 1998 for Leslie's murder despite her body not being found at the time. For years, he withheld the location of her remains, occasionally hinting that they might be in Ohio, but providing no definitive details. It wasn't until 2018 that Hanna finally decided to disclose the information. In an interview facilitated by his attorney, Hanna provided photographic evidence and marked a map to show where Leslie's body was buried in a private roadside park in Belpre, Ohio. On November 7, 2018, after a meticulous search guided by Hanna's directions, authorities unearthed Leslie's remains at the former Shell employee park off Ohio Route 618 in Belpre. Dental records confirmed her identity, and notably, she was still wearing the bathing suit from the day she was abducted. 2 bullets were found with the remains, corroborating the cause and manner of her death. After 35 years, Leslie's family could finally lay her to rest. She was buried next to her brother, who had passed away earlier in the year on April 21, 2018. Raymond Hernandez, known as Ray, was born on September 19, 1962. After completing his education at Haltom High School, Ray pursued higher education, earning a master's degree in criminal justice and criminology. At the age of 45, he resided in Grand Prairie, Texas, and worked as a probation officer in Dallas. Ray had a profound dedication to aiding underprivileged youth, spending time volunteering at the local detention center to accumulate credits for his college coursework. His commitment and kindness earned him deep admiration and respect throughout his community. On August 8, 2008, Tragedy struck when Ray's remains were discovered after a fire in his home. The fire was not accidental. Ray had been stabbed to death before the blaze was set by his killer. His mother, who called him daily, grew worried when her calls went unanswered, ultimately leading to the grim discovery. Neighbors reported seeing a purple car, possibly a Dodge Stratus, in Ray's driveway on the evening of his death. An individual was seen leaving in this car, only to return minutes later carrying something. On this second visit, the driver was observed exiting the vehicle and walking along the side of Ray's house toward the backyard. The fire was noticed shortly after this individual left for the second time. Investigators believe the killer left after committing the murder to obtain fuel for the fire and perhaps to clean up. A DVD player was also reported missing from the living room. During the attack, the killer had injured himself and left DNA evidence behind on a broken and bent knife. The DNA was uploaded to CODIS, but unfortunately there were no matches. By 2017, advancements in DNA technology allowed investigators to generate a sketch of the suspect's appearance. This sketch was distributed to the public, but it did not immediately lead to any suspects. The case then saw significant progress in 2022 when the suspect's DNA matched samples from 2 sexual assault cases in Fort Worth, Texas. Authorities then worked with Identifiers International, which specializes in genetic genealogy, to trace the DNA. This effort culminated in the arrest of 44-year-old Jerry Lee Gardner on October 4, 2024 in Lufkin, Texas. Gardner's DNA was confirmed to match the crime scene evidence again, leading to his charge of capital murder. He is currently held on a $1 million bond as detectives continue to explore the motive behind the murder.